Alright, in this video we're told to factor 8x squared plus 6x minus 20x minus 15. And what we're going to do is we're going to use factoring by grouping. So to factor by grouping, what you do is you kind of group things. So what I'll do is group the first two things together. So I'm going to put parentheses around them to show that I'm grouping them. And then I'm going to group the second two things together. So what I do is I always put plus in between my sets of parentheses. And that allows, if something has a negative coefficient, it just carries the coefficient with it. If you don't do that, you're going to have to worry about trying to factor out a negative, and that's a little confusing to start with. As you get better, you'll start doing that without really thinking. So now we have two groups, and we're going to factor each of them separately. So the first set of parentheses, it's as if the second one doesn't even exist. So don't worry about it right now. We're worried about 8x squared plus 6x. So what we do is look at the coefficients, 8 and 6. Greatest common factor of those is 2, so we take out a 2. Then we look at x squared and x. The greatest common factor is x. And now what are we left with? Well, when you factor out the greatest common factor, what you're really kind of doing is dividing each term by it. So what I'm going to do is divide 8 by 2 and get 4, and divide x squared by x and get x. So I'm left with 4x. And then if I divide 6 by 2, I get 3, and if I divide x by x, I get 1. So really all I get here is plus 3. And now we repeat it for the second set of parentheses. So I look at, I'm going to put a plus here. I look at negative 20 and negative 15. Greatest common factor is negative 5. So I'm taking negative 5 out of both of those. And then what am I left with? Well, if I divide negative, and so there's only an x with one of them, so I don't have to worry about x in this case. If I divide negative 20 by negative 5, I'm left with 4, and then that x is still there. And if I divide negative 15 by negative 5, I'm left with plus 3. Okay, so I'm kind of halfway there. And now if I look at this as if it's two things, and I'm going to try to greatest common factor out of this. So really factoring by grouping is just a lot of using the greatest common factor. I'm going to underline the greatest common factor of these two products that I'm looking at. So it's actually 4x plus 3. That shows up in both of them. So I could actually factor that out. So that's what I'll do. So I have a 4x plus 3. And if I factor that out, what am I left with in the first case? Well, I'm left with 2x. And then in the second case, I'm left with the minus 5. So I end up with 4x plus 3 times the quantity 2x minus 5. What I want to show you here is, I'm going to do this again, but what I'll do is I'll flip the two middle terms. So in the next problem, it's the exact same problem, except the 6x and the minus 20x are going to be switched. So here we go. So this is kind of a new problem, but really the same problem. So I'm going to get the same answer, and that's what I want to show you. So again, we group it. So 8x squared minus 20x this time, and plus quantity 6x minus 15. Okay, so those quantities switched, but let's see what happens. So same idea. So 8 and negative 20. Greatest common factor is 4, and then x squared and x, greatest common factor is x. And what am I left with? Well, I'm left with 8x squared divided by 4x is 2x, and then negative 20 divided by 4 is minus 5, or negative 5, and then x divided by x is 1, so this would be minus 5, plus, and then I look at 6 and negative 15, I can take out a 3, and then there's only an x, there's no x in the other term, so I can't do anything there. So what am I left with? The quantity, 2x minus 5, right? 6x divided by 3 is just 2x, and then negative 15 divided by 3 is negative 5. So now I look at these two things, and I say, oh my gosh, I can actually factor out a greatest common factor here. So the greatest common factor would be the quantity 2x minus 5, so let's take that out. So 2x minus 5, and what am I left with in the first case? 4x, and in the second case, plus 3. So I get 4x and plus 3. And that's exactly the answer that I got last time, except kind of the order is switched, right? So the first time I did it, I got 4x plus 3 times 2x minus 5, and in this case I got 2x minus 5 times 4x plus 3. But that doesn't matter, right? Because multiplication doesn't matter the order in which you do it. So it works either way. And anyway, that's factoring by grouping, which is really just greatest common factoring over and over and over again. But I hope you found this helpful, and good luck.